Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 most nostalgic art teams. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10 I have got the Thyler, and the reason why I'm putting this creature here is I just think it is such a useful one, and it really did shake up the space of Ark when this thing released, as obviously it didn't come out with the base game in 2015. It was still in early access, of course, and it was for a while, but this was a healthy inclusion to the game, and people really did love this creature when it came out, and they still really love it now. It has definitely stood the test of time, and people have a lot of nostalgia with this creature for obvious reasons. One, it has been in the game for quite a while now, so there's been a lot of time to use these creatures, and they're so useful and great anyway. Everyone remembers when they were introduced into the game, as it really did shake up everything, especially in boss fights at the time, because they were allowed in then. Obviously then they did have to be banned for their wall climbing abilities, but still, you know, that was a really nice time in the past. And with these creatures still being great to this day and people having great memories with this creature, it really does make sense why it is on this list, and obviously why I've put it on this list. They also do the bleed ability as well. They are great combat creatures, truly amazing tames. They can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. They are fantastic. I'm so glad Wildcard added them to the game, and they really did shake up the island a little bit. Continuing on, we have got the Therosinosaurus, and no, it's not because its saddle was unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
Great inclusion, but that is not the only reason why I put on this list, but definitely, you know, at heart it's still a factor, am I right? Either way, these creatures, I'm pretty sure, were in the game reasonably early on. I don't think they were out when it released, but I'm not actually quite sure with the timing of these creatures. I've just remembered for a while I have loved these creatures as general gatherers. Yes, you can use them for the dragon boss fight, they're great for that, but I loved their ability to gather fiber, and at the time I'm not sure where the moss chops was in the grand scheme of things. I didn't really use any of those things. I remember just killing those things for hide. I didn't really use them. The only time I have used them is for organic polymer from Kairukus. That's the only use I've got out of the moss chops. Doesn't have enough nostalgia for me, of course, to be on the list. But the Theory was my go-to fiber gatherer, and also it's a pretty good berry gatherer as well. And calling it the Chickle Chicken was something which really does make this thing a lot more memorable. If the creature has got a funny nickname, it is just going to become a lot more memorable and sort of a lot kinder to people as well, and kinder in their minds, and this really does fulfill that. It's a great creature which is capable of loads of gathering, and that is why it's so respected in me, and that is why I find it to be a really nostalgic art tame. So the UT is a prime boss creature, but actually when it first released, I know it's a bit of a later one, which is why I'm kind of putting it back. I think I'm pretty sure it was a 2017 or 2018 creature, something around that. Pretty confident is 2017 though, rather than 2018. I remember it coming out around the time Aberration was released, and I really like these things as a general carnivore. Obviously I did use them in boss fights for their courage raw. That was just a really nice thing to have, but I loved using them just as the essence of a carnivore because they were fast, agile, mobile, and they did a lot of damage. Their health is quite decent, and their stamina isn't the worst thing in the world. Yes, at least Spino was a sort of better carnivore in my eyes, but I found this to be better just for land travel. I don't really know the particular reasons why I decided it, but I just liked it so much, and I still love it to this day. You might just say, well, Spino can do everything, and Spino could pretty much do everything in terms of travel that the UT could do, probably even better. But for me, the fact that it was so useful in bosses, even though it was a late creature, this did make quite a massive difference considering the stage of the game it came out to me, and that is why I put it on this list. And it's still far back enough that the nostalgia is definitely there with this thing. At number 7 we have got the Rex, and I find that come on with the Rex, it is just such a well-known dinosaur. It's probably one of the most popular dinosaurs in the earth, or on the world even, probably even the most popular. Everyone that knows what a dinosaur is will know what a T-Rex is, probably a Stego and a Triceratops as well, and it really does stand to that in Ark. The Rex has a lot of nostalgia. They have obviously gone through a model change since release, but they've been in the game right since the beginning. They've been that tame that people tend to look up to in the early days of Ark. Now they're not really looked up to a lot actually, which is a bit of a shame because there are a lot of other creatures which are just completely changed the space of Ark. Ark is a very different game now to what it was in 2015. Yes, for the better, but in some ways I might say for the worse as well. But that is what Ark 2 is trying to amend, and ASA tried for a little bit but then kind of failed because you've got to keep it how it is nowadays. The world's moved on, and in my opinion it's moved on to a sort of a better place. But obviously the nostalgia factor is going to make everything in the past pretty much seem better than what you're dealing with now, because it gets rid of all the bad stuff and then you've got all the good times that you had. And at the time you probably didn't know that there would be nostalgic moments, but they definitely were. But yeah, this creature, king of boss fights, really is a valuable tame to have in any given boss fighting scenario and general attack in combating scenario, as long as there's not too much mobility involved, as it does really struggle with that. Talking about the Spino, which obviously I did in the previous 2, I think, Tyrannus is when I was talking about this thing. Either way, the Spino does hold a strong place in my heart for a nostalgic tame. These were kind of what I sought after even more than the Rex. I don't know if that was just me, but I thought the Spino as a bigger, more powerful creature. They didn't have as much health as the Rex, and they still don't, but they have a heck of a lot more mobility. Back then they didn't have the hydration buff and they couldn't stand up on their hind legs, but I still love these things to death and use them in boss fights hugely. I used it actually a bit more than the Rex, I would say, in my opinion. I do use Rexes more now, but mainly I do actually use the Deinonychus, which is not on the list because it's not quite old enough for that nostalgia factor, so I am definitely sticking to the older bunch for this list, of course. Like, come on, you've got to stick to those probably pre-extinction creatures, I'm going to say. All of these creatures are aberration, or sooner. In fact, probably even sooner than that, really. The UT's a sort of outlier. But obviously now they have a TLC, they've been updated further. The Spino is really a great, neat little creature to have, to ride around on and to take anywhere for any of your mobility needs. They're great in the water, great on the land. Sadly, they can't do any kind of crazy acrobatics and things that you get some of the new creatures to do, but they really don't need that. At heart, they are still that very mobile carnivore that we all know and love, and they've been around for so long. The nostalgia is definitely there with a creature like this, and I really do enjoy using this thing still to this day. They have definitely stood the test of time and are very much a nostalgic Ark tame. At number 5, we have got the Stegosaurus, and I'm putting this creature here as the Stego was my first kind of like adventurous tame, you could say, in a way, or like maybe difficult tame. It took about 2 hours to tame one of these things up. I think it was like a level 1 or level 2. It was it was a very exciting moment, we'll say, in my Ark career. Obviously no kind of career actually came from it at that point, but now it is sort of a career, but not really. Either way, going back, it took 2 hours to tame this thing. Was my most impressive tame at the time, and I'm pretty sure I got that Stego killed by some raptors or a Carno or something like that, which wasn't the fondest thing that's ever happened to me. But you know, Ark is Ark, and you know, Ark is going to keep being Ark in those ways. Obviously, again, like the Spino, these things are now the TLC, and it makes them even more nostalgic in a way, because now they've been added to more, and it makes them feel like they're in the modern age while still being that nostalgic Ark creature. I know a lot of you will probably be saying, like, where's the Parasaur, the Triceratops? I'll give them a brief honourable mention here at the number 5 spot, because they do deserve to be here in some aspect, just not for me, but I know loads of people, like the Parasaurs and all of that, they are like peak nostalgia. And actually there'll be one honourable mention further on in the list, which is actually going to be right at the end of the list, and it's going to be a sneaky number 0, but I'll let you wait for that and you'll figure out what it is. Now, the Baryonyx obviously wasn't in Ark when it released, but I'm pretty sure it was a similar period to the Thyler when the Redwood Biome released and obviously the Swamp Biome released, and then we got ourselves the Baryonyx. I'm pretty sure that's how the chronology worked. Sorry, I couldn't get that out of my mouth for some reason. Don't know why that was such a difficult word to say. Either way, the Baryonyx was the king of caving. Previously we'd used sabers, another great honourable mention there if you were thinking of that creature. But yes, after this thing came out, the Bary was the king, and it still kind of really is the king. Yes, you can use shadow maids and things like that, but obviously that's not going to make it on the list. It's too recent of a tame, but still very good for caving. Either way, the Bary was the king of caving at the time, and as far as I'm concerned, it still pretty much is top of its league. It is very mobile, it is the right size to fit into pretty much any cave that you could think of, and they are fast, agile swimmers, meaning the underwater caves were very easy to do as well. They can stun creatures up to the size of a Megalodon as well with that tail ability, just truly a nice thing to have. But yes, the fact that they could cave really effectively and was kind of something new and novel really did make them stand out to me, and I still use these things to this day. And they really were great creatures for me, and I still love them so much, and they really are something of what makes my Ark playing my Ark playing. At number 3, we have got the Carnotaurus. Maybe an unpopular opinion, as you might be saying, well, the Aloe is just so much more nostalgic. Did come a little bit later on, but you know, your opinion is your opinion. For me, the Carno is that creature where I'm like, it is just the one, okay? The Carnotaurus has been just through everything with me, through every single map that I've played, pretty much, actually, basically, or actually, I'm just going to say all of them downright, unless the Carno didn't spawn on the map. I have had myself a Carno, and I have prized that Carno. I've been naming them Meatball the whole time as well. I did name them Carny Dave a little bit because of Squid's Ark series, but then I named them Meatball after that, which is kind of what Carnotaurus means from Latin translated into English. It's a bit of a rough translation, but it's pretty much that, or it's like meat lizard or flesh lizard or flesh ball, something along those lines. Either way, Carnotaurus, a very nice creature, which has also undergone TLC. You'll find a lot of these creatures actually have, apart from the next one on the list actually, but you'll find out what that is when it's that time. But yeah, now they have the bleed ability, which they didn't have before, and obviously that comes with a second headbutt attack, and that's pretty much all the TLC I had as far as I'm concerned, which really does make them even better creatures. I find they're quite fast, agile carnivores for their size, maybe also the Aloe is more fast and more agile. Fair point, and you could say that they're a better creature, and fair point on that too, but for the nostalgia factor for me, this always tops the Aloe, and I'll pretty much always go for a Carno over an Aloe for the nostalgia factor, and I just really like using them, and I find myself to be quite good and useful and effective when using them, and I'll continue to use them, and for that they have to be on the list for me. In at number 2 we have got the Giga, and when the Giga released, which is still 2015, it really did make quite a big difference. So did the Quetzal in the same year as well, another honourable mention which I could have put into this list, but it didn't make as big of a difference to me as the Giga, and I'm sure many of you will agree with that. While the Quetzal was cool and you could still level movement speed and you could build a base on the back of the thing, this was the biggest carnivore we'd seen it yet, and we thought nothing really could get bigger. Well, the Titanosaur came out afterwards, but you know, we didn't know that was happening, and it was just so OP and so cool to tame. You don't even care what the level is, you just got one, you went out there, you found one, you got one, maybe named it Tiny Tim if you watched the Squid video on it. You know, if you know, you know. That is actually probably one of my most rewatched art videos. The nostalgia in that thing, truly a great video. If I do remember, I might put a card up on screen and link it there, but if not, maybe go search for it. Just look up iBallistic Squid Ark Giga and you'll find it. It's like episode 50 of the original Ark series on that. Honestly, basically the best video that YouTube has ever seen in my opinion in terms of the nostalgia content. But yeah, they really had a new perspective, they dealt so much damage, and their rage ability was something which was seen as quite cool and in a way a little bit scary. And coming in at number 1 we have got the Argentavis, and this really does top the nostalgia list for me. It is just such a nice creature to use, it is very ergonomic, it was designed with a lot of thought put into it, and for that I really do love it as a creature. It also has seen a TLC since it's been released as well. Kind of weird to think that the Giga hasn't, at least as far as I'm concerned, it hasn't still got that atrocious stamina and all of those things with it. But I guess the Carnotaurus is the sort of TLC of the Giga, if you will. But yes, this has seen a TLC. Well, I'm pretty sure that added all of the weight reduction stuff, something along those lines. At least I'm pretty sure, confident that it added the saddle as a smithy if it didn't have that already, because I think the Castoroides was the first creature to do it and then it adopted it, and that regen buff was definitely not present. Actually, they might have had the weight reduction stuff back then. Either way, I did use these things for a lot of meta farming, because although the Pteranodon, another honourable mention you could put on this list as well, was a great creature, I didn't find them really to be very nice to use at the time. Like, I was like, yes, first flight, and that is really a big achievement in Ark, but the Archie just felt like the next step and the thing that was really memorable for me, and once I got one, I never stopped using one, and to this day, still use them. Again, not really sure with the chronology of whenever the TLC came out, but to this day, I still really use them and love all their abilities. They can even carry an extra creature in their mouth, which I'm confident they didn't have before the TLC. Just honestly, great creatures. And in at number 0, I've decided to put the Dodo, because does anything get better than the Dodo? It's probably the first creature you'll see in Ark. Maybe unless the Dilo's there, but you know, the Dilo's not a creature you remember. The creature you remember is the Dodo, this little cute thing that runs around on the beaches. It is the pinnacle of Ark. The Ark logo and the Ark wallpaper should all just have the Dodo at the forefront. You've got the Dodo Rexes and the Dodo Wyverns, but nothing stands in comparison to the great original Dodo, and that is why, obviously, it deserves to be king of this list 100%. The top 10 best underwater Ark teams. In at number 10, we have got the Mosasaurus, and I'm putting this thing here because really in today's age, it isn't the height of underwater travel like it used to be. The Mosasaurus is in some need of some TLC. It does lack a lot of inventiveness in its abilities, but it still is going to be a good underwater tame, and it's deserving of the list. The Plesiosaur is just slightly outside the bracket, so that creature is not making the list today, but the Mosasaurus just manages to squeeze in. It's not my favorite underwater tame by any means, but you can definitely get around on it quite easily, and there's a lot of good mobility and motion that you can get out of this creature. Like, he's still going to use a Wyvern even though they've got a bad turning circle because they're great flyers. It's kind of similar with this thing, but it's not quite the same because they aren't really as good as something like a Wyvern. A Wyvern is a much better creature, but Wyverns can't go underwater, so that's besides the point really. So next up, we have got the Echiosaurus. I was going to consider putting the Tuso in this spot as well. I don't really use it much as an underwater creature, but I guess I'll give it a brief honourable mention here because it still is quite a nice underwater tame, but it didn't make it on the list quite for me, but still, you know, it has good mobility and it is also quite a nice dealer of damage. The Echiosaurus, however, is just a speed demon when it comes to underwater travel. Yes, maybe not the fastest underwater creature we've got on our list today, but still one that can really get around, and most things won't be able to keep up with this thing whatsoever, which is why I like this as an underwater tame. Although it's not really going to be great for any kind of attacking or heavy damage dealing, that's really not what it's here for, especially considering it is a passive tame. It is one of the easiest creatures to tame on the list today, so it is definitely very deserving of this place, as considering how easy this thing is to tame, and also just generally how much travel and mobility you can get out of this creature, it is insane. And in my opinion, because of this, I'm putting them above the Mosasaur, because the Mosasaur really does need some TLC, like I mentioned before, whereas this is not really in any need of TLC. It's very good how it is, and it is so much easier to tame and so much more worthwhile. Coming up next, we have got the Megalodon, and this is one of those tames where I think they're actually quite underrated. Yes, it's not going to be the best underwater tame in existence. There are some creatures which I would definitely prefer over this, but I feel like considering how long it's been around for and actually what abilities it still holds, it is a very viable option. Maybe not for PvP, as that does tend to be quite a different world, and there are very specific tames that you'll be using for most of the time. At least that's my understanding overall. The Megalodon doesn't really come to too much play in that, but underwater creatures don't really Anyway, and with this creature dealing the bleed ability, that is something which I really do hold home for PvE players, as it really does make a huge difference. It does for PvP as well, but again, it's not really relevant in that scene, at least as far as I'm concerned. The bleed ability just allows a new dimension of damage to be dealt with this creature, and on top of it, it is pretty mobile, and it just makes it a nice, relatively small creature for defeating the Moda on Gen 1, especially considering you've got the X variants of these creatures and just general little fighting machines. In at number 7, we have got the Bills of Buffo, and come on, this creature is definitely deserving of a spot on the list. It is small, relatively compact, and it is a dream in underwater scenarios. The speed that you can get out of this thing is absurd, and also the fact that it doesn't necessarily spawn in the water off the get-go means that it could potentially be easier for you to tame. The only real downside with that in this argument is that they do spawn in the swamp, but as long as you can find one that's, you know, more on the outskirts and still a reasonably high level, you're going to have a good time. Even lower level ones are still going to have that same speed. They're just going to sacrifice a lot on weight and health and some other important things that you might need in the ocean biome, because there are some pretty deadly creatures out there, and you know, it's a pretty harsh environment, so I would definitely be careful if you're on a lower level mount. They also are just insane cementing paste gatherers. It's not really going to make a huge difference for underwater travel, although you can just farm trilobites with these things, and that is my all-time favorite way to get cementing paste with these creatures. It's just the go-to for me, and I really love it for its speed, its overall general agility, and just being a relatively easy tame to get. Just an all-round great tame. Now, we all know the Mailwing is great when it comes to general ability. It pretty much tops every list that you could possibly put it on in that genre. Well, it really does do a great job as an underwater tame, and most people don't expect it. First, it can glide across the top of the surface of the water, and I find that to be quite an effective, useful ability, escaping danger that may be in the depths. And I know usually they don't come up all the way, but if you've got some jellyfish or some electric eels, yes, they can still shock you while you're on the surface, but you can get away much quicker. They also are just really fast swimmers as well. You probably wouldn't expect it out of these creatures, but trust me, they can definitely go for it, and you'll not be let down by the speed and agility and just general mobility that you get out of these things in any environment, that being underwater or not, which is why I'm putting them so highly on the list as well, because they're not only the best underwater tame really that could fit in this spot on the list. Obviously not the best underwater tame out there, because there's still 5 more creatures to go, but they're just so great in their ability to be great in the water and then great on the land as well. There's just a lot of versatility with these creatures, and hence why they're so high on the list, because you might say the Meg or the Bills is just a better underwater mount, but with the versatility, this is doing much better. In at number 5, we've got the Rhino Ganessa, and I feel like a lot of people forget that this is sort of an underwater creature. I know you probably wouldn't use it for that. It is an insanely great mount for general PvP use. It can wreck bases, and although its health can be pretty temperamental in some scenarios, it has been proven to be highly successful in that environment. Also, just from a PvE perspective, they are great for picking up a wealth of creatures of huge sizes like Rexes and Paraceratheriums. They also have a lot of speed and a lot of weight, so it makes them really amazing for metal gathering. It's just such a nice thing to have. Yes, we all know and love the RG, but the Rhino Ganessa in a lot of cases is just generally the nicer creature to use, and it is an insanely great fast swimmer. If you've ever taken this thing into the water, then you'll know you can still get a lot of speed and agility with this thing, and you still have all those abilities and heavy damage dealing that the Rhino Ganessa obviously has. I'm not sure if it has oxygen or not. I think it would, considering what it is. Well, it does have an oxygen stat obviously, so you probably have to be a little bit careful with that. I haven't been in the underwater environment for too long with this thing. I've just merely gone to skim down to some caves and things, so I haven't really paid attention to it. But again, that's something which you're probably going to want to pay attention to. and their tame method is something which you could consider quite exciting as well, which adds to the creature being so good. I don't know what it is, but with me, if they have an exciting tame method and the creature has an exciting tame method, then it really makes them even more fun to use once they've tamed, especially if it's like a lengthy process. It's not too difficult really for the Rhino Ganessa. It's way easier to turn like the Reaper, although it kind of follows the same tame method because it impregnates a dino of your choice. Choose a Bronto really. I think it's the best one out there. I think for effectiveness reasons, something like that. It's way easier when it's not you and it's a creature, and then you have to get all those resources instead of the XP which you get from the Reaper, which I don't think is as good of a system, but you know, still, honestly, it's not the hardest tame in the world, especially if you prepare, and it's still a pretty cool one, and I think it just adds to the general ambience of this creature on top of everything it already does. So continuing on, we've got the Spinosaurus, and it is no doubt that the Spino is a really great underwater creature. I'm going to give the Barry a brief mention here, as I haven't actually put the Baryonyx on the list, but I would put it around this spot as well. I just think the Spino is the superior underwater creature just generally. This thing has more speed than the Barry, and obviously it has the added damage, and it's still really agile too. And considering the underwater cave entrances and underwater caves are so massive on the island anyway, you're not going to struggle to get a Spino down, and in there it is ridiculously easy, and you're a heavy damage dealer. You just need to be careful of obviously all the jellyfish and the electric eels and the oxygen which comes with the Spino as well. They're your only real downsides, but just considering how mobile this creature is and versatile again, like the Mailwing, it's a better underwater creature than the Mailwing, by the way, because of just all the added damage and defense, which is something the Mailwing lacks in. It is just such a versatile general travel mount as well. It's great on the land, it's great for boss fights, it's just great for going around the map, obviously being a nice travel mount, and it can deal hefty amounts of damage, especially considering it can stand up on its hind legs ever since the TLC, which is just a nice neat ability for it to have. And on top of that, which I haven't even mentioned yet, which I probably should have earlier, they have the hydration buff too, so when they're in the water they deal even more damage and just have an even better buff applied to them when they're in the environment. So it's going to make them even more powerful and even more formidable to all other things that will be in the ocean trying to get into your way. But really, do be careful of the electric eels and jellyfish. You might underestimate them, but if you get yourself caught in a stun lock, it's not going to be a good time for you or your Spino. But apart from that, really, gold star creature deserves to be here. In at number 3, we've got the Basilosaurus. Come on, it does need to be here. Its immunity to electric eels and jellyfish is really something insane. Should I give an honorable mention to the Therosinosaurus as well, as I've heard that has the same ability. I haven't tested it enough to warrant it being on the list, but actually I do want you to comment down below, if you use the Therosinosaurus in an underwater environment, how does that actually act? Because I want to know, and actually I will test it out throughout the week, because I'm playing around with some of the new creatures more. But yeah, comment that down below if there's something which I definitely like to know. The Basilo is really an ideal caving creature though, although yes, it does have that depth limit which you need to be careful of. The immunity to electric eels and jellyfish, and also just general speed, make it ideal for the job. Also, I'm pretty confident it doesn't have an oxygen stat as well. They can jump to and make little rainbows if that's your thing as well. They can also make oil on top of this, so if you want some slow oil farms, it's really not the fastest thing in the world, then you can have the Bass on your side, and obviously the X-Bachelor is on Gen 1 if you want an even better version. Next up, we've got the Shadow Mane, and I have to put this creature here because in my opinion it is really one of those good ones. It has the hydration buff from a start like the Spino, but it is much smaller and in my opinion much more agile, and it still does all of that heavy dealing damage. On top of this as well, it does have a pack buff, so if you're going down with some friends or you just bring some more along with you, then you can have an even bigger advantage in underwater environments. I'm pretty sure they do have an option buff though, so be careful with that. They have natural armor and require no saddle, so that's an even bigger benefit. Less resources to get these things, and also just come on, these creatures really do pack a punch. I've probably said it earlier because it just needs to be mentioned, really. Come on, they deal so much damage, they're so fast and agile in the water, packed with abilities, they have that hydration buff, so they're going to be great for underwater caving, great for underwater bosses, and great for anything that you might want to do in an underwater environment in Ark, and that is why they deserve to be in the number 2 spot in my opinion. So let's get on to the creature that actually tops the list today. In number 1, I have put the Bloodstalker. It was there the last time I think I did one of these videos, but I've obviously updated the list a bit more now, and I'll continue to update my list as obviously the channel goes forward. But this is still topping the list on the best underwater mounts out there. It is just so agile on land and in water. It really does add to the versatility of this creature. You can also see all the aggros of the tames around you, so you can see what creature to aggro to easily evade danger before it even comes near to you, and they are zippingly fast in an underwater environment. Although maybe they don't have the damage capacity to defeat bosses, they still have the damage available to easily kill quite a lot of creatures around them. You'd be surprised how much damage a Bloodstalker can actually deal if you really put them to work in a scenario like this. If you get a good Bloodstalker, you're going to be having a good time with that. Good mobility, good damage, and great versatility, as you don't need to simply cry out your creature or something like that when you hop out of the water. You can just keep traveling around the map with these things, and obviously they're just useful for general travel and just around the map. They are nice companions to have too. They really are very, very versatile tames. Just as a versatility list, they would definitely be up there. The only thing obviously they lack is you're not going to be killing any moders with these things, and they don't have any upgraded variants like some of the creatures that I've mentioned on the list, but they're already so good and just so overpowered in my opinion that I think they deserve the number 1 spot. But comment down below your thoughts if you feel like maybe there should be another creature in at the number 1 spot, and actually what is your favourite underwater mount out there. So thank you to my wonderful patrons Ekaterina Puchkova, Karina Thorne, Dominic Masajewski, and Ethan Tapia, who have all supported me through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. If you want to join this list, then go join Patreon or YouTube members, but thanks to all of these guys.